A couple of things I'd like to start with. For those of you who just think there's absolutely no chance of existence of extraterrestrials, alien life, that UFO sightings are completely not real, I want to read a couple of quotes to you just to see what this might think. These are a list of famous people who have made offhand or directed comments about aliens at some point. Albert Chopp, who's the Deputy Public Relations Director for NASA, said, "I've been convinced for a long time that flying saucers are real and interplanetary. In other words, we are being watched by beings from outer space." Stephen Hawking, smartest person in the world, said, "Of course it's possible that UFOs really do contain aliens, as many people believe. The government is just hushing it up." Albert Einstein said, "Given the millions and billions of Earth-like planets, life elsewhere in the universe without a doubt does exist. And the vastness of the universe, we are not alone." Dr. Herman Oberth, who created rockets, says, "It is my thesis that flying saucers are real and that they are spaceships from another solar system. There is no doubt in my mind that these objects are interplanetary crafts of some sort. I and my colleagues are confident that they do not originate in our solar system." Another is General Nathan Twining, who said that the UFO phenomenon being reported is something real and not visionary or fictitious. If you didn't know, he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's the people charged with defending all of us from certain death. I got more. The former director of the CIA, Admiral Roscoe Hillenkotter, said that unknown objects are operated under intelligent control. It's imperative that we learn where UFOs come from and what their purpose is. I can tell you behind the scenes, high-ranking military officers are concerned about UFOs. General Douglas MacArthur, in one of the more astonishing statements, said that the next war we have will be an interplanetary war. The nations of Earth must someday make a common front against attack by people from other planets. The politics of the future will be cosmic or interplanetary. Clearly he was wrong. He made that statement in 1955. We fought a whole bunch of people on this Earth. But he's not completely wrong yet. Harry Truman said, "I can assure you that flying saucers, given that they exist, are not constructed by anyone on Earth." Ronald Reagan said, "I think about how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And I ask you, does this threat not already exist?" And finally, Mikhail Gorbachev said that the phenomenon of UFOs does exist and it must be treated seriously. Now, speaking of Russians, yesterday at about 10:56, Reuters had a news report that indicated that Russian scientists believe that alien civilizations will be discovered within the next 2 decades. Just because of how much life exists, they had done a bunch of studies. Now, of course, they're being bashed by a couple of different 100 scientists across the world. But the entirety of the Russian scientists, the top of their game is saying, no, in fact, aliens do exist, and they will be here. Okay, so I want to read you a little story real fast. Listen to the story, and let's sound what you think it is. The writer says, "In my 30th year, in the 4th month, on the 5th day, while I was among the exiles by the Kabar River, the heavens were opened, and I saw visions. I looked, and I saw a windstorm coming out of the north, an immense cloud with flashing lightning, and surrounded by brilliant light. The center of fire looked like glowing metal, and in the fire was what looked like 4 living creatures. In appearance, their form was human, but each of them had 4 races and 4 wings. Under the wings on their 4 sides, they had human hands. As I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its 4 faces. Each appeared to be made like a wheel intersecting another wheel. As they moved, they would go in any of the 4 directions that the creatures faced. The wheels did not change direction as the creatures went. When the living creatures moved, the wheels beside them moved, and when the living creatures rose from the ground, the wheels also rose. What appeared to be at the waist of this creature, as he looked like glowing metal, full of fire, and that from there down he looked like fire and brilliant light surrounded him the entire time."
from the Bible.
Yes. Congratulations. It is Ezekiel chapter 1, verses 1 through 28. A lot of people who write about this particular literature base have gone through to reinterpret every major historical text as if it had been created in some capacity by aliens, or that aliens had intervened. I'm going to start with one of the stories that's been the most developed over time by a couple of different authors, and that's the history of the Sumerians. Zacharias Sitchin is the primary author for this particular theory. He has interpretations of ancient Sumerian texts that says that extraterrestrials first arrived on the planet 485,000 years ago. These extraterrestrials referred to by the Sumerians as the Anunnaki, which is translated, those from heaven to earth came. They are believed to be from the planet Nibiru, a planet allegedly orbiting our sun in a strongly elliptical orbit about once every 3,600 years. Nibiru right now is far out in deep space and is unlikely to be easily detected. It's on the opposite side of its orbit. The Anunnaki are an extremely long-lived race, potentially living as long as 500,000 Earth years, but in Nibiru years, that's roughly 140. Whenever they came, there was a lot of different conflict that was happening between some of the leaders of the Anunnaki, but for the most part, their main interest in Earth was gold, as it turns out. They started extracting gold from different places, specifically the Mesopotamian region, southern Africa, Persian Gulf, etc. About 272,000 years ago, the Anunnaki started mining the gold from South Africa, and all the miners who were there got a little bit fed up with either working conditions or any number of things and started to mutiny. This caused this particular conflict over whether they should have to mine in South Africa. I'm assuming it was just incredibly hot and they didn't want to deal with it any longer. But they had to come up with a compromise. The compromise that the heads of the Anunnaki came from was that they wanted somebody else to do the mining for them. The only thing around was something called Homo erectus. Is that caveman, I'm presuming. And they took these cavemen and they genetically altered them with other Anunnaki to create what we now know as Homo sapiens, i.e. you, all my little gold miners. What ends up happening is they use us from that point to mine all of their gold for them and to keep extracting the gold and sending it back up to the Mesopotamia where they would send it back off to the planet Nibiru. The ancient Sumerian texts also take into account that the Anunnaki were part of things like the Great Flood that you see in the Bible and a couple of other different places throughout history. Lots of the different histories start to intersect with the Sumerian version of what happened, and it seems as if they are possibly all in line. In effect, extraterrestrials from that planet came to Earth to mine all these elements, and that's what happened was they mined it, they got tired of mining, they had a class labor conflict, created us to do all that work for them. And what ends up occurring is that by virtue of our own spawning, they lost control of us. We were the kind of analogy is like, if you've ever seen like one ant, you can probably take care of it pretty well and crush it if it starts getting out of line or starts like rolling on you or whatever. But if it multiplies and there's like a couple thousand of them, you don't really know what to do. You can't really control them. And essentially this is what happened to the Anunnaki was the humans just kept multiplying and just kept multiplying and creating little baby humans everywhere. And they did not know what to do with us. So they stopped doing anything with us. They lost control of us, which is where we are at now. There are three possibilities of what happened after they lost control. One, they left the planet and they aren't coming back because they don't want to deal with us. Frankly, that's the one I hope for. Number two, they're still here, and they have been the entire time, but they're just kind of hanging out, not really doing anything. And number three, they left. but eventually they'll come back to check on both our gold production and how we turned out as a species. The gold production thing, I'm going to be pretty sure they're going to be happy with. They're going to find Fort Knox and be pretty pleased. The rest of it, how we, treat each other, relations, how we, the way that we kind of act in general, they might have something to say about that, and that might not be good for us. So that's one of the particular alien texts that exists. There are a couple of different others that you have throughout time. The history of UFOs and alien theories keeps going on. I'll give you a quick synopsis of some of them. In 2500 BC, the Hindu religion, which was in India, started describing in some of their ancient texts dogfights amongst gods piloting flight machines. It sounds like a flying saucer battle kind of to me. The Incas in Peru in 2000 BC said that their gods were from, how do you say the plebeians, or like Pleiades?
Pleiades,
yeah. Say their gods were from the Pleiades, just as the Sumerians. The Pleiadians were the same people that the Sumerians believed they were talking to. It was another way of describing the Anunnaki. In 1000 AD, the Mayans started calling extraterrestrials the masters of the stars. In Old England, in 1290, peasants started spotting silver discs flying around the heavens. In the 1560s, parts of Germany and Switzerland, specifically Nuremberg and Basel, started observing spheres and discs and tubes flying about in the skies overhead. In 1716, there were a British astronomer, Edmund Halley, said that he had unexplained aerial displays by unidentified objects in the sky. In Dallas, no less, in 1878, a Texan saw a large saucer in the sky. More happened in Sacramento that were also seeing lights flashing across the sky. During World War II, fighter pilots from both sides of the Axis side and the Allied side said when they were flying at night, they would see lights, etc., pull up on the side of them. That they had no idea, there was no radio contact, there were no other fighter pilots around, they were just bright lights next to their planes. They started to think that they were secret weapons from the other side to track them or kill them, and they started calling these secret weapons Foo Fighters. I guess you didn't know the origin of that particular band. It got better. There's more history. Roswell, New Mexico happened. A quick synopsis, because I can't exactly go into full detail. This is one that is debated constantly every day by people on the internet. In 1947, an alleged unidentified flying object crashed in the New Mexico desert near Roswell. Strong evidence suggested that this was extraterrestrial life. One particular person, his name was William Brazel, or Mac, as he likes to be called, noticed clusters of debris while working on his home, his ranch outside of Roswell. What ended up happening was he found the debris, the Air Force showed up to look at the debris, and then the Air Force explained this segment as being a weather balloon that had been going up in the sky that we were trying to use as a new weapon against the Soviets that they were testing out in the desert, and it dropped out of the sky, etc. But what ended up getting sent, there were a couple of different reports. One report was sent by telex to the FBI office in Dallas, Texas, quoting an Air Force officer saying that there was a disc, a hexagonal disc, and it was suspended from a balloon by cable, which was approximately 20 feet in diameter. Major Curtan advised that the object found resembles a high-altitude weather balloon with a radar reflector, but that telephone conversations between the officer and the people in the field had not borne out this belief, i.e. somebody from the FBI thought that they were talking about something else, and they were covering it up as if it was a weather balloon. So there's a possible cover-up conspiracy there. In the mid-90s, the Air Force came back with two reports saying that in 1947 they had a project called